SoCal Connected is made possible through the generous support of the Amundsen Foundation, serving the Los Angeles community since 1952, and by a grant from Ann Ray Foundation, a Margaret A. Cargill philanthropy.
On tonight's SoCal Connected.
This is the material that everybody puts in their blue container.
The uncomfortable truth about recycling.
If no one's there to buy it, it's trash.
And a look at the powerful forces spending big to promote plastic.
On behalf of the Plastics Industry Association.
Representing the Pactiv Corporation.
Dart Container Corporation.
Political influence by Dart Industries is keeping the Los Angeles City Council from stepping up and saying, we've had it with the deception.
I am standing in front of a new section of the landfill that had to be designed to take the recyclables from the recycle center that are no longer being bought on the open market. This is the material that everybody puts in their blue container. There's approximately 20 tons behind me. You use your recyclable materials, you wash it out, you put it in the blue bin because you're doing the right thing because it's going to be recycled. It is not being recycled. It is being brought to landfills like this one all over America.
Over the years, life has gotten more and more convenient. Takeout, delivery, meal kits, grocery shelves stocked with packaged products. And when it comes time to throw our waste away, we believe we're doing the right thing. We faithfully separate the stuff that can be remade into new material from the stuff that has to go in landfills. Blue bin, black bin. But we've hit a breaking point.
Cities across the country are facing what the nonprofit Ecology Center has called a slow-moving recycling crisis.
We produce too much trash, and we're running out of places to put it.
The trash from your quick, convenient gulp can end up anywhere on Earth and last forever.
We're drowning in cheap plastic.
Single-use plastic utensils, single-use plastic cups and lids and straws, plastic bags, plastic containers, and ultimately, plastic is going to represent 20% of our carbon footprint.
Why? Because a powerful plastic industry is spending millions of dollars to keep it that way.
Mr. Chair, members, Joe Ackler on behalf of the Plastics Industry Association.
Representing the Pactiv Corporation.
International Franchise Association.
California Manufacturers and Technology Association.
Dart Container Corporation.
Meanwhile, across the country, cities like Los Angeles continue to tell residents to put products that aren't being recycled into the blue bin.
Daddy, you forgot. Every litter bit hurts.
Right, Susan Spotless. Every litter bit, thoughtlessly dropped, blemishes a bit of America.
Waste wasn't much of an issue in America until the 50s, when canned goods, processed foods, and packaged products exploded onto the market.
Please, please, don't be a litter bug, 'cause every litter bit hurts.
The Make America Beautiful campaign debuted the so-called Crying Indian ad in 1971.
People start pollution. People can stop it.
Most people didn't realize the Indian was actually an Italian guy from Hollywood. And the PSA seemed genuine, inspiring a movement of young environmentalists.
Today's junkman is often a member of the environmentally conscious younger generation who has joined a recycling campaign.
When curbside recycling began in the early 90s, the message was aimed at turning the youngest generation into future recyclers.
You see, at the recycling place, there's a machine for cans and a machine for bottles.
Instead of throwing away your aluminum cans, foil, and other reusable metals, take them to a collection center. Be a planeteer. Recycle.
And that message hasn't really changed in the last 50 years.
The power is yours.
Really, people don't know what happens to the recycle. They put the container out in the morning, they come home, and it's emptied.
And you call that the magic?
Call it the magic. As long as the magic happens, the customer's happy.
But there's nothing really magical about it. Recycling trucks dump their contents at facilities called MRFs. Workers sort the items by material type, pulling out trash and contaminants, and occasionally plastic bags. Machines do the rest. Then this guy, aptly named the fisherman, does some final quality control. The material is then baled, weighed, and sold to a buyer. The price is determined by market demand and negotiated by a broker. But a lot has changed since the 70s.
Now, there's so many different kinds of materials that are so much more complicated than they were 30 years ago.
Take coffee. Back in the day, folks drank it from mugs at a diner or bought beans in aluminum cans to brew at home.
And the recycling customers loved it because it's one material. And metal weighs a lot, so you make money on it, and you can also recycle it over and over again. But most people now in today's world, we're not buying coffee in a can. We're buying it in these polymer bags that have aluminum foil inside. So there are multiple layers of plastics put together. They're not recyclable.
Now we get our coffees to go. And what do they come in? Paper cups, lined with plastic.
From a recycling standpoint, they're a disaster, and they are nothing really but trash.
But the problem doesn't stop at coffee. Low oil prices have created a glut of plastic processing in the U.S. It's cheaper to make new plastic than to recycle it, which means it's just not that valuable.
The biggest misconception about recycling is that everything is recyclable. Please don't put this in. Again, this person did this not thinking about it. They're well-intentioned, but these plastic bags are a huge nuisance. This would be a don't. Clamshells, right? Because they do this. Please do not put this in the recycling bin. All right. Oh, so we're gonna do a long shot here? The problem is there's a difference between recyclable and recycled. And almost anything could be recycled if there is a market for it.
If there's no one to buy the bales of material, it's not going to be recycled. But years of mixed material packaging have made it hard for some consumers to know what goes where.
I would say,
Oh my God. No idea. How to recycle? Cut open bag.
I think that
Squeeze gel into compost or trash can and recycle liner.
now you've got me double thinking.
So I guess that's what I would have to do.
Are you confused? We're confused. To be honest with you, it's a lot.
That's because the labeling isn't always clear. A lot of consumers think that the chasing arrows symbol on the bottom of most plastic products means they're recyclable. But those numbers are actually just part of a code that was developed by the plastic industry back in 1988 to help facilities sort properly. Number 1 stands for PET. Think water and soda bottles. Number 2 is HDPE, often used as packaging for detergent and shampoo. Then there's 3, 4, 5, 6, and wild card number 7, which stands for other, meaning everything else. According to FTC guidelines, companies are allowed to put the arrows or numbers in an inconspicuous location on their package, even if the item isn't likely to be recycled. To complicate the issue even more, every city in the country has its own list of items they accept at the curbside bin. In LA County alone, that's 88 cities to keep track of.
There are some nuances between community to community, say cartons, for instance. In the city of Burbank, we do not accept cartons for recycling. Some other communities do.
It's as clear as mud. This whole program is not harmonized. Every city is doing their own program. It's just kind of a free-for-all, and the public right now is really, I'm very concerned that they're getting so frustrated, they're just gonna stop.
For decades, the U.S. shipped our cheapest plastics to China and other developing countries.
From the early 2000s through till just a couple years ago, 3 through 7 plastics were shipped overseas, diverted from landfill in California, and everyone was happy to call it recycling. The problem was that the 3 through 7 plastics were never getting recycled in China.
In fact, 91% of the world's plastic was never getting recycled anywhere.
In reality, that material was being sorted by very low-wage workers getting illegally dumped, washing into the rivers, the bays, and ultimately out to the ocean. That plastic pollution is not plastic that originated in those countries. It's our plastic that we thought we were recycling.
When China and other countries like Indonesia stopped accepting our recycling in 2017, MRFs across the U.S. were left with tons of mixed plastic bales. And now we know exactly where they're going.
And if we can't sell it, then it's got to go into the landfill. And it's a heartbreaking thing to have to do, but the necessity is there because we can collect all the stuff we want, but if no one's there to buy it, it's trash.
And it's not sustainable.
California does not have unlimited landfill space. And now we have introduced recyclable material to the landfill that was never designated to come here to begin with. Because it's compacted and baled, it may take even longer to decompose than it normally would, some of it. It's an all-around not so good deal.
Because we can't send that plastic overseas anymore, the entire recycling market is growing increasingly unstable.
The scrap value for recycled plastic, recycled glass, recycled paper even, is at record low levels right now.
Don Monroe's family has owned a scrap metal recycling facility downtown for 4 generations, and he's seen the prices fall firsthand.
Every day it's up and down. It's a yo-yo. It's even more so now than ever before. We're seeing swings in the market that were not normal. I mean, yesterday, the Midwest and the East Coast had a $35 drop in steel. That's a huge drop.
Monroe says he's noticed the customers who come to his center walk away with less and less.
When demand is high, people can come in with a truckload and have $80 to $100 worth of scrap. And that's definitely worthwhile. Whereas today, I mean, some people might get $20 to $30 on a truck. They're taking a loss, and that's unfortunate.
And the same is true for bottle and can redemption centers. Recycling centers across the state are being forced to close because their operations are no longer economically viable. 248 shut down in August alone. Governor Newsom delegated $5 million in temporary assistance to those centers in his 2019-2020 budget, but the funding was too little too late. So now, we're at a moment of reckoning with our own waste.
For a decade or two, we thought we had this all figured out. We had a get out of jail free card. Our marketing and messaging was like, recycle, you're saving the earth. What we didn't connect the dots on is that we are blowing through resources so fast. How long can we sustain that trajectory?
It's good to know that a lot of things that we use can be used over again.
Maury Wolfson spent 40 years advising Colorado state leaders on environmental and energy issues, which is why he was so surprised when he moved to California and saw the signs.
Yes, when I first arrived in Pasadena, I was getting oriented to the city, and I'd go to these different restaurants, and at so many restaurants, there would be this large sign that would be right outside the window that would say, "Now you can recycle your foam at home." Now, as if something new has happened in Pasadena, that you can now recycle foam.
What Wolfson found was that foam, expanded polystyrene or EPS, commonly known as styrofoam, is actually a form of plastic, number 6. It's one of the biggest sources of marine litter in the world. It photodegrades instead of biodegrades, meaning it breaks into tiny pieces that birds and fish mistake for food. It never decomposes, and it's notoriously difficult to recycle.
Let's call styrofoam what it is, the bottom feeder of all plastics.
In 2017, the New York City Department of Sanitation found that repeated attempts to recycle food service foam in Canada and the U.S. have failed for the past 30 years, leaving cities with huge costs and no buyers. And LA County's own Department of Public Works called the market for food service foam virtually non-existent. Nearly all, 98% of foam U.S. consumers toss into the blue bin ends up in a landfill, according to the EPA. So who keeps telling consumers that foam is easy to recycle?
When I looked at the posters down at the bottom, there was a little logo that said DART. And so I said, oh, okay, who's DART?
DART began in 1937 in Mason, Michigan. Our products are used by hundreds of millions of people on a daily basis.
What I found was that DART may be, perhaps they are, the largest manufacturers of styrofoam cups in the world. The president and founder is a man named Ken Dart. I just Googled his name and found out that he's worth $6.6 billion. He owns 1/4 of the Cayman Islands.
You may not know the name DART, but you know their products. Solo cups, takeout containers, plastic forks, plates, knives, many of which are made of polystyrene. Foam is a billion-dollar business for DART, and they're trying to fight its bad reputation by making EPS cool again, with videos like this.
EPS, Expanded Polystyrene, number 6. You'll see it wrapped around anything that needs reliable protection.
For decades, the company has gone to great lengths to prove that their products are environmentally friendly and recyclable.
Polystyrene makes our societies safer, healthier, and more productive. But here's something you might not know. It's also recyclable. You might have been told not to recycle your EPS products, but that's changing, and you can be a part of that change.
The company even has websites like Home for Foam and Foam Facts that promote foam recycling, encouraging people to wash their used plates and to-go boxes and drive them to drop-off centers that could be miles away.
Home for Foam. I've visited their website. I've seen what they have. If I was so determined to want to recycle my foam and I took 10 bags down to Carson, they would look at me as one of the first people that's ever showed up.
We called 46 foam drop-off centers in California, compiled from DART's websites, Home for Foam, and other plastic industry groups.
I'm just wondering if you guys take foam. Do you guys take foam? I'm wondering if you guys take foam to recycle. Not at all.
Roughly 70% of those centers didn't take foam, were out of business, or had no idea what we were talking about.
And you guys are a recycling facility, just to be clear? You're a finance company? I just want a Caribbean cruise for 2.
One of the centers in El Cerrito said that non-residents could drop off their foam, but they'd have to pay a fee. Michael Westerfield, DART's corporate director of recycling, declined to tell us the amount of EPS the company produces.
That's proprietary.
And do you know what percentage of what you create is collected by your drop-off centers that you have?
No, but it would be a small percentage.
But Westerfield repeatedly insists that foam has the potential to be successfully recycled curbside. If only cities would partner with DART and invest in expensive new equipment like optical sorters and foam cleaning machines.
With the optical sortation, it's really a game changer. We just spent millions of dollars on this facility to buy it from curbside programs. So we're there.
Well, why isn't it being bought then? I mean, why aren't you guys buying it? It's very difficult for them to find a buyer for this material.
If we're there if they want to buy it.
According to LA's sanitation department, the MRFs the city contracts with are not interested in partnering with DART. Recycling polystyrene is a money-losing venture for them. A 2013 report found LA recycles just 0.04% of all foam collected curbside, and the 2 sorting facilities that used to sell it to South Korea have closed down. But promoting foam's benefits in California is critical to industry heavyweights. The state is home to a $10 billion restaurant industry. That's a lot of plates and to-go containers, the sale of which is regulated by city and state governments. Between 2017 and 2018, DART spent $2 million in campaign contributions and lobbying in California. Some of that was on dinners and lunches with elected officials, who then voted in DART's interest, even helped kill a bill that would have restricted the use of foam.
The amount of money these companies invest in lobbying is off the charts. Many of these companies give great big gobs of money to legislators and people high up in government, and often can access directly at the highest levels.
DART is far from the only plastics company interested in politics. Industry groups like the American Beverage Association, California Restaurant Association, the American Chemistry Council, Pactiv, PepsiCo, and the Plastics Industry Association spent nearly $4 million in lobbying dollars in the 2017-2018 legislative term.
I mean, there's untold groups. Typically, DART is one of the very few who really lobbies as DART. Many of them hide their brand under the umbrella of the association, so they don't take the backlash of the public for lobbying against, for example, a packaging recycling bill that everybody really wants.
But plastics companies like DART aren't just spending money in Sacramento. They routinely send lobbyists to city council meetings whenever a single-use plastic ban is being considered.
I'm also here on behalf of Dark Container and speaking in opposition to the ban. The FDA has deemed polystyrene as safe and well within the safe limits for use.
Here on behalf of the California Restaurant Association to express our opposition to any ban of expanded polystyrene.
There is no other product out there that keeps hot foods hot, cold foods cold, and protects against leakage like this one product of foam.
So these are very nice people. They're dressed very well. They speak very well. They're hired because they are good communicators.
I call it the Italian suit brigade because they show up in all these Italian suits and it is like an army of lobbyists that you're up against. So it's like running a race with a leg tied up. We are in a fight, an advocacy fight, that's unfair. We are being outgunned.
I think that the political will only comes as a result of citizen campaigns that overwhelm the status quo and the lobbying from the industry that has everything to lose.
As some of you know, I've been pursuing this for quite a while.
Wolfson managed to beat the suits. In 2016, Pasadena joined over 100 other cities in California, like Santa Monica, Berkeley, Long Beach, and Malibu, in banning foam food containers.
Expectation is that if enough cities continue to adopt these kinds of ordinances, sooner or later the state will climb on board.
One city yet to adopt a foam ordinance? The city of Los Angeles.
Hey, hey, ho, ho. Climate change has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho.
Despite zero-waste promises from politicians like Mayor Eric Garcetti, who has vowed to phase out foam by 2021, the city known for being green has repeatedly dropped the ball on foam. But LA officials have known about the environmental concerns with polystyrene since 1988. That's when Mayor Tom Bradley instructed the city to stop using foam takeout containers within its facilities. DART responded by arguing that foam cups are good for landfills because they're as harmless and stable as rocks. Not only has LA failed to ban polystyrene, they still direct residents to toss their foam into the blue bin, even though their own reports admit virtually all of it ends up in the landfill.
When the city of Los Angeles tells their citizens to go ahead and put something which is not recyclable into a recyclable bin, they are kind of like DART. They are deceiving the public.
But it's not just foam. The city also tells residents to continue to recycle those 3 through 7 plastics that we used to send to China. Things like plastic wrap, bags, and straws.
You know, local governments are being the parent that don't want to be honest with their kid. They don't want to say that Santa Claus is fake, so they keep perpetuating this myth. Santa Claus isn't real, and most plastics aren't recyclable.
Honesty matters. If we were really aware of which materials were recyclable, we could make better choices at the supermarket, or choose to eat on real plates instead of ordering takeout.
If our local governments were willing to tell us the truth, that number 3 and number 4 and number 6 and number 7 plastics are not recyclable, then we would maybe stop buying them.
For years, many of us have been engaged in wish cycling, putting items in the bin that we're not sure of. So why have we believed in Santa for so long? Maybe it's because a lot of the messages we've received about recycling come directly from corporations to make us feel less guilty about buying their products. Remember the Crying Indian? The Keep America Beautiful campaign wasn't a public service announcement. It was created in 1953 by a group of corporations like PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, and Anheuser-Busch. And the message was clear. Companies aren't responsible for creating waste. People start pollution, people can stop it. 50 years later, Keep America Beautiful is still around, and its board includes representatives from PepsiCo, Dow Chemical, American Chemistry Council, and DART Container Corporation. And we're still blaming ourselves for our waste problems instead of the companies who make the products and aggressively market them to us.
I think it's untenable to continue with manufacturers just simply selling anything they want into the free market and then expecting government to pay to pick up the mess.
Hopefully this will force everybody, the manufacturers of all of this, to change their ways. If anything good comes out of it, I hope that's it.
SoCal Connected is made possible through the generous support of the Amundsen Foundation, serving the Los Angeles community since 1952, and by a grant from Anne Ray Foundation, a Margaret A. Cargill philanthropy.